Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Ron, broadcasting to you from the Extreme Studios in the Pinos Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I have on the line from the Great Midwest RDV. And today we're going to be talking about a 1979 special. And no, all you caddy fans out there, I'm not talking about Moonraker. I am, of course, talking about the two-part CBS miniseries special movie of the week event
Yeah.
that was huge at the time, Salem's Lot, Part 1 and Part 2. RDV, I've got so many things I could say about this. I'm kind of interested, though, in your take first. Was this a first watch for you? I mean, what did you
Yeah, I was advertising this on Instagram and Twitter. This was a first time watch for me. And I wish I would have been like a two-part review because holy crap was this long. I
Three
mean,
hours?
we talk about Justice League director's cut being 4 hours, but it's like this kind of I don't know. It's like I had fun with it, but then like there was a lot of the slow parts in the film. You could tell where they needed to cut it and to come back another time.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I do love the vampire stuff. I did not care for the Nosferatu vampire. It looks so stupid. Sorry.
Really? I thought he looked great.
If you're like 12 years old in the 70s, it was 1979 when this came out. Like,
Well,
you know,
how would he have looked better?
look better, but not showing him. Just showing the fangs, not showing the giant weird ears. You know?
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not a fan of that. The way we saw it in the last voyage of the meter, the way he looked in that, you could barely see him. It was you could
Oh,
tell
you
that
want
this
him
guy.
out of frame, basically, is what you're
Yeah,
saying,
you
right?
could tell that this guy was a guy with prosthetic ears.
That's true.
Yeah, and he's blue and stuff. Um, Honestly, I liked the way they showed the other people when they were vampires. They had the contacts in. They're pale and the tears. Especially the one guy who got bit. The first guy got bit by the kid,
Hmm.
and then he's the first we see. He's the first one you see the turn and
Oh,
just the
when he's
way
sitting
he
in the chair in the
chair.
doctor's,
Yes,
that's
yeah,
good shit. Yeah.
yeah. The little boy, obviously. Recently watched the Christy Swanson Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie,
Uh-huh.
and there's a scene on there where Luke Perry's friend is floating outside the window. They got it from this movie, Salem's Lot. Little Billy, whatever his name is, or I forget what his name was, or Danny.
Danny
Uh,
Clickboy. Yeah.
yeah, Danny Clickboy gets attacked, and then they had a funeral for him, and then the next thing a couple nights later, the main kid here, he's basically sees his buddy. Is, hey, flying out the window, let me in. I'm like, fuck that. He grabs it. And I gotta say, I love the fact you could really tell this is a time period as far as when this was made, 70s. This kid doesn't have any video games. What he has is little figurines. He's really big into horror. He had the Frankenstein stuff, Hammer horror stuff. He had the little model kits he'd paint and stuff. That was a common thing. Uh,
Absolutely was. The
yeah,
modeling thing, to your point, was spot on too. And he was at that age where you could tell the parents were uncomfortable about him. But he
yeah.
came across to me as a very smart guy.
Hmm.
He's the kind of almost kid you almost would have. He would do his homework. He was active in plays. He had friends. He wasn't just a bookworm that stayed
No,
upstairs.
no, no. Yeah, he went out. He was involved in the school pageant. He had two close friends. Uh, really into theater. By the end of the movie, he became like the mini version of the main guy. I
Yeah,
forgot what the actor's name is, but
David Soul.
David Soul and David Soul for the movie is like at first you see this guy pull up in this rad like Jeep pulling up, man. Like I was like, and he's singing at the hotel and he keeps watching the house and then obviously you know what's going on. Like without even all you gotta say it's a vampire movie. There's a
Yeah.
creepy old house there, and he's watching it for some reason. You're like, because he has post-traumatic stress from what happened. Has he been here? Eventually, we learned that he actually was from this town. He changed his name, and when he was younger, he saw someone be murdered or hung himself. And like so he's been afraid of the house ever since. And then but he's also been following the reports of like over so many years, this house has so many different people dying in it. He's to the point where he's obsessed with the house. At this point, he doesn't know that vampires exist. But eventually, did you come across that? By one of the guys, being it's on his neck, and it's just like I said, it was kind of like what would you do in the real world situation? Like
Mhm.
obviously, with vampires and zombies up, but when you first come across it, it's like a lot of people are skeptical. So I did like that leading into this, and I kept thinking when he's sitting at a typewriter, I'm like, this is a Stephen King novel, so Stephen King's probably imagining himself as the main guy and the main character. I wonder if that's what he was writing it. Uh, because obviously it's true that we all live through our imagination, and that's where movies come from, books, our imagination. So I was curious, like, is this Stephen King like self-inserting himself into this?
Stephen King was known as an alcoholic and did a lot of drugs, and but at the same time too, if you ever read his, he had a
Yeah,
book called On Writing that a lot of people loved in the late '80s because it was by the mouth of somebody that got shit on by all the critics, but yet he sold millions of copies of books and people ate it up, right? So
yeah,
his big thing was is you got to write like 5,000 words a day or whatever it is. You got to get this done, and that's your job. It doesn't have to be great. Don't write the great first act. Just write something passable and do it. But what he was really known for, especially with the short stories, wasn't the horror element, it was the character development, because he, despite what you may think about his views that he's been expressing politically over the past 10 years or so openly with the way social media is today, um, he did a very good job of capturing the small town feel of what goes on and what we like to say, the layers of it, the secrets beyond secrets. And we get that here, that as a kid,
hmm
you're not going to care about it. Like the like the lady who's got the fat husband who's actually pretty smart, but then
yeah.
she's wanting to screw everybody, and you could just kind of tell, just yeah, it is like that in a small town.
He
Everybody knows everybody's business.
Yeah, especially the guy. He's kind of abusive, and now I'm speculating because we don't really know why she cheated, but we see that he was obviously he drank a lot,
Yeah,
and so she was screwing the realtor,
but
and
was
then
that already going on? That's what drove him to drink. He's a
yeah,
trucker. It's a hard job. She stays
is
at
that what
home.
drove him to drink though, or was he drinking
We
before
don't know,
this? You
and
don't
and we
know,
and it's not pertinent to the story, but he's
but
so Stephen King's good
oh,
at putting
it
characters in him. You know what I
I
mean?
love it. He tells he's you see him. He's gonna go out of town. Won't be back till after midnight. So he knows that she's cheating, or he suspects. And he waits there at the house. He's just there. Expect he's drinking, and then he grabs a shotgun and he sees the guys go in there. Goes up there, and he basically has the guy's shotgun. Point, and he's like, come here. Let's go downstairs. Now hold the barrel up your face. Don't let go. It's got 5 pound pressure. I already got 3 on the trigger here. I'll blast your face. And then he pulls the trigger and it clicks, scaring the shit out of the guy. And you see him run out of the house, only for him to be attacked too.
Well, and
By
the thing
yeah,
with all these subplots, King was always able to kind of make them germane to the story. And here it's because he's setting up the two guys that we meet that become victims later as they go pick
hmm
up the package at the wharf.
yeah,
Want to back up a little bit and talk about the opening scene that you talked about and a comment you made. When we see Ben Mears with the Jeep getting out and he's stressed out, obviously we saw a prequel, and it's 2 years earlier, which is the current time in the movie.
hmm
I'm just taken away because I know that I think I posted the link on an Internet Archive, which looked like it was a good copy. I've had a copy for a while now. That's just a great looking one. I just love the late '70s shtick out there as far as culture, how it's blending into the '80s. You can still wear corduroy, this and that, be mismatched. It just your hairstyles were funky. This just I felt like I was there, especially when he gets out of the Jeep and he's looking around, the wind's blowing. It was filmed in Ferndale, California, which is the whole Humboldt area region.
yeah.
If some of you people are familiar with that, so it's got that going for it.
It's
This
meant
at
to
the
be.
time,
Yeah,
I was going to say, because I know as a first watcher, this was I think the CBS movie of the week, but it was a two-parter, right? So it's a mini series
yeah,
technically. So that's why watching it in one take for 3 hours, it seems like a slog. And also too,
yep,
uh, a lot of people who have negative things to say about it point out some of the things you mentioned. Well, we got all these characters, but what's really the point? And well, when you watch it, to me,
it's
the movie's about the horror is the dread of what you're feeling in the atmosphere leading up to it. And I wouldn't say it's completely gothic, but you see eventually all these unrelated people. And this is what I always loved about Stephen King, the stories, and how they eventually somehow, they're like layers of onion really far apart, but they're getting really, really close to the center, kind of like a spiral,
yeah.
universe,
It's
if you will. And then towards the end, you've got two people that have never met each other until like the last 20 minutes of the movie, with Ben Mears and the young man that you were talking about. That
yeah,
his buddies, the Glick boys, who kill other people. Not they're some of the first victims there. I'm talking about his name's Mark. That actor actually died early this year too. He was a preacher in Hawaii, apparently, which I
Mm.
thought was interesting. But I thought this is a really good adaptation of what King tries to do, and a lot of people thought this movie was eh. And you know what? You may be right about the vampire here, but I'm telling you, this made me think of the horrible movie we reviewed sometime back here on the Extreme Movie Show with Nick Cage called Renfield. Because what struck me as being the complete opposite is James fucking Mason is the scariest goddamn thing on here, and it's not even close. And he still terrifies me to stay watching. He is so friggin' good. He's Straker, right? He's the guy that could give a complete two shits about anything or whatever. This is
He's
the guy,
he's Dracula's helper, right?
right? But you know how sometimes they always make the helper weak, hapless, pathetic, a loser, an ass kicker,
Yes,
always wanting to just
he
do it.
had
Maybe he'll train me. No, this is the other way around, bro. It
yes,
seemed like he was the ringleader of everything, and the vampire was just his tool. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. He basically, well, you could tell that he was afraid of I'm not gonna say Dracula, but this vampire, his master. He gets his power from his master. But yes, you compare it to Renfield, which I still think was a great movie.
I know, I
But
know.
it's completely opposite though. Renfield got his power from eating bugs. You know, they did a cutesy comedy.
Right.
This was a serious version, which we've seen in other movies before too. You always had the guy who works for Dracula, because Dracula cannot get around by himself.
Right.
He needs someone, and
He's a logistics guy.
he's shipping it from London. It's the guy he has to help him, move him place to place. Who works with the son is Ghoul, as they explain. And this guy basically sells antiques, at the shop. He sells an antique shop, and a lot of people are asking, what the hell is this guy movie here to sell antiques? And like in a place like this, no one's gonna buy that.
It's a legitimate point.
But which I love though, because he's got the antiques, and then the main guy, I want to say Soul, but I think his name is Mears or Bears.
Ben Mears. You're talking David Soul, right?
Yeah.
That's Ben Mears.
Right. Ben Mears comes in. Well, the main guy, the author or whatever, the new guy comes in and then to the shop. And he's looking for silver. He's like, "Oh no, we don't have silver here."
Hey, he gets all up in his business.
Yeah. But I like that you get to see the boys. His from his perspective too. And they kind of they said they don't really meet until later on. But when Ben goes to meet his old former I guess drama teacher or whatever, and the boys up there doing his act for the play, and so they kind of they're in the area, but they don't talk not until the very end of the movie. And this kid is I kept thinking it's this kid's in there. He's basically obsessed. He's the one you'd see in Fright Night. He's obsessed with all this stuff.
Yes.
And of course, his parents end up getting whacked because Dracula comes to his house, knocks their heads together, but only after we get a cool scene where the table's starting to float up and everything. It's just everything's shaking, a little mini earthquake, and then James Mason comes in and he's and the priest is put that shit down, or Dracula's gonna slit his throat. And you're right. He pretty much is
that's the famous scene there. He's challenging the priest. He's taunting him.
Yeah. And that's the thing though. He is kind of like the boss in that sense right there, which is weird because if this had been a Dracula movie, Dracula would been bitch, shut up, I'm in charge. Instead, this is James Mason's no, I'm the main guy here, and which is really sad for me because I like when the vampire is in control, and you get this the kind of the Igor, yes master, all that shit. This, like I said, this was kind of what drew me out for the vampire. As I said, the vampire was kind of weak in this. And then, he's easily dispatched later on in the movie with the giant. But I love how he did it. It's like the old movies, get the giant huge stick. And then he claymation melts. But only for them to find out that there's other vampires in the cellar down there too. Mears and the boy who's now an orphan end up going on the run because the vampires are going to hunt them. Now the thing is, I was interesting too because I was okay, and if he kills the main vampire, are they going to revert back to being humans, or are they going to die?
We don't know, and apparently
you don't
not,
know,
right?
But apparently that's not the case because the girl, the love interest, she gets bit, by
Yeah.
by the vampire, and we
Yeah.
find out 2 months later, well, the boy and this kid randomly he's pretty much kidnapped this boy, went to Guatemala,
Well,
and
let's
they're
take a
hiding out.
minute and talk about her, Bonnie Bedelia. She's was it she was the wife, god damn it, in the Moonlighting Actors movie, the action one with the guy falls in Nakatomi Plaza, whatever.
It's good Die Hard.
Die Hard. So Susan Norton was a Playboy Bunny. She wasn't actually. The real estate agent was, but Bonnie Bedelia I thought looked very nice here. I didn't think she was a stupid character. Obviously, she's the love interest. Um, it's kind of easy when he just kind of sees her, walks up to her, and they start talking, and he's like, "Yeah, you're in my books, baby. That's me." I kind of say this though about Ben Mears as a character in her. I understand the attraction, seduction thing. He's slightly older, divorced, and she's dating a local towny guy. Totally believable. King knows those relationships well and puts them in, right? I thought he
Mhm.
was kind of a bit of a dick, though. Hey, you should be doing this and that. I just thought he was kind of a bit full of himself. And so some people say that his acting wasn't that good in this thing. Like when he would go to be scared, he'd
Yeah.
kind of look more like Durr, Durr face. But I thought Bonnie Bedelia came across pretty well. And to your point about vampires and the characters, I really think this movie excelled with the other characters because Bonnie Bedelia's character, Susan, her father is a doctor who doesn't believe anything, but then also the high school teacher that he knew,
Yeah.
they end up being not main characters, I would say, but
Main
it seems
side
innocuous how
plot
they
keepers.
meet and then they spend a bit more time together. Then
Yeah.
when the shit hits the fan in the third act and you see what happens to all of them, I thought they were really done well. We've talked about this before that with movies having roles for older people to play like that are just normal human beings. Not everybody is a 9 out of 10 on whatever scale you want to measure it
Uh,
by. These look like normal people in a small town, and I
yeah.
thought they did a great acting job.
Yeah, I want to address what Jim's saying. Last time I saw this was the miniseries. My dad liked it, but mom found stuff to do in the other rooms. Now, I watched this in 3 hours cut. I kind of wish I was your mom, find something else to do in the other room because it kind of felt like it was just dragging on and on and on. If I had watched this when it originally aired, I probably would have liked it more. And I was explaining to Rob, it's like if I'd have been a 12-year-old boy watching this like in 1979, I would have been enamored with it. Just the fact that it's like you've never seen this before. It's a new thing. It's like it's on CBS. It's airing. It's like a 2-part miniseries. Stephen King, the King of Horror, and it's like, and then James Mason. It's like there's so much to love about this. The fact that I'm watching this and I watched a Virgin Internet Archive that was they basically put the two movies together, and it kind of you could tell I needed a breaking point. I needed an intermission because I was starting to drift off. After the boy gets the first grabs the guy, and I'm like, hey, when is this gonna speed up? Because I felt like it just needed to be a little bit more action, and it just felt it was just dragging.
But that's the whole point is that
Yeah.
we're so attuned to like Blade or John Carpenter's Vampires
Well,
or
you can
Halloween
build
of
up, but
action and a lot of kills. And in
you can,
this is more of a thriller.
I need a balance. That's the thing. I didn't really. It was just dragging, and then in the end, it's like Chuck Norris just the one kick.
No, you're actually. I was just thinking of that too. We've talked about that, and
Yeah.
for me, I think one of the differences between the taste you and I have, and I've always wondered is too,
Yeah.
with us being a bit of an age difference, and of course, a young 20-something Professor Pixel,
Yeah.
the attention span and all that part of it, I think, is legit because now, you talked about this being 1 3 hour slog. It was a big deal back in the 70s, going into the 80s, when it
Yeah.
was ABC or CBS, the movie of the week, because that's when they would put a James Bond movie on or something like this.
Hmm.
This at the time was the biggest budgeted made for TV
Yeah.
movie. I don't know what surpassed it, but up to that point it was. It looks great. They spent a fortune on it. The house is terrific. Everything looks good.
Yeah.
I thought they did a really great job, but that's when TV really upped their production value. Whereas now, you could argue whether they do or they don't. And I
Yeah.
think that TV back then was more of this. And, on Extreme TV, the Sunday night preview before we go live, the three of us, Professor Pix and I are currently covering Mission Impossible, the original series we told you about. And
Hmm.
that there is a lot going on. And you and I have covered shows that, what's the one with Kiefer Sutherland that came out earlier in the year? Where
That was a rabbit hole.
Rabbit Hole. Okay, so Rabbit Hole is the kind of show, without really saying too much about it, is where there's a lot of stuff going on, and when you see it, parts of things happening in other episodes, you get a different perspective on what you think is going on. And I would say that, of course, not every show is like that, but the fact that there's so much crap going on is a lot of like what would happen back then. This movie is all about setting up the relationships for that one final act. And I think, to your point, most people today automatically assume it should be faster paced, more quick cuts,
Yeah,
this and that, rather than
and
just settling into the
I,
atmosphere of it and
I,
just watching what happens
I
at
gotta
a
see.
singular
I'm
pace.
looking at reviews on this. There is the Blu-ray. A lot of people did not realize it was a miniseries, so when they watched it, they felt it was a slog fest.
Yep.
So they released this as a 2-part movie. You know, Blu-ray says like, you know, part 1, and then like, so it's basically you should watch this in 2 different nights. I'd say, you know,
The
yeah,
cutoff would be, I was going to say this is a stupid kind of thing. We talked about how once there's a few deaths there, they have a funeral, right? And the funeral's up
yeah,
there on the hill that overlooks the town. It's a nice, beautiful shot. Um, you and I have covered, of course, we've broken the channel with Chuck Norris and a bunch of other martial arts guys, right? And you know what happens when you go into a bar?
well, 2 things: you get your wallet stolen, or you get beat up.
No, it's a bar fight.
Oh,
It
that too.
right?
See,
Okay, you go in a bar, there's gonna be a fight, right? Well, a funeral should be like that too. If you go to a funeral, something's gotta happen, and that's what happens here. That's what I was thinking about it because, the gravedigger, he's going in there, and it's middle of the
yeah,
day, which I liked, and sunny. The
yeah,
wind's picking up a little bit. He feels compelled or somehow, and he goes down into where the Glick's, boy's coffin is, and he opens up, looks at him, and then of course, he gets bit, and that's your cutoff right then
yeah.
and there. Like, oh shit,
What
it's on now.
what really kind of messed me up this movie, because I didn't realize he was worked at the cemetery. The dog, I thought, like, wait, he's the caretaker for James Mason. I was so confused because they kept cut to this guy, and then they just cut to this iron fence here, and the dog barking, and I kept thinking, like, what is? I didn't realize he was the Undertaker.
Yes,
So
yes,
it kind of ruined the experience for me too. As I was confused, like, who is this guy? You know, I know I've probably seen this before. Just like I saw the guy who played the realtor. He's been in some stuff too as well. It's just a lot of small time actors, but yeah. So I mean, I wish I would have known that he was Undertaker. Maybe it's what I said. One of the points. I was 20 minutes in, and I was wondering, like, okay, all right,
again,
so
it
it's a
happens
vampire
fast
movie.
if you're not paying attention,
Yeah,
even
yeah,
though it's not action oriented. That's the way a lot of TV was back in the 70s, going
yeah.
into the 80s. And then it kind of got watered down a little bit. And I know that the Miami Vice show season 1 that you're almost done with right
Well,
now. We're talking about reviewing it. That's where things started to get really slick.
it's like watching a 3-hour Incredible Hulk series, movie or like all. And those can be kind of slog fest too, a little bit. As far as the TV show, certain episodes, the formula, he's gonna get beat up. This came out like, again, I kept thinking, like, hey, it's like I'm waiting for David Banner to get beat up, but he never gets beat up until the very end. And it's like that's what I felt like watching this. I was like, I know what's gonna happen, but I'm like, when is it gonna happen? And I'm just looking forward to that part, is the vampire and more of that stuff. And I felt like I just felt let down at the end. I was more intrigued by the ending, the cliffhanger they put you on. It's like, well, there's more vampires coming to hunt us. I want to see that. I want to see him and the boy, doing like James Woods taking vampires.
I know,
You know,
right?
it's, you know.
There was a sequel called A Return to Salem's Lot, I believe,
That's
but
what I heard.
I'm telling you,
It's nothing
I
to do
know
with it.
nothing about it. I've never seen it. I don't know anybody that's heard anything about it. And growing up, at this particular point, I was into Stephen King, and so he was huge in the 80s.
Yeah,
And junior high people had books and everything too. It was incredible watching all this stuff and reading
yeah,
it.
I heard a lot of people like the book, but they like more than they like the movie. The book
Well,
is more
they say that
engrossing.
about everything, don't
Yeah,
they?
but it is true with certain things though, that the movies can't really adapt well with the comic or book has. But I was reading up after the movie ended, because I saw there was a Return to Salem's Lot. It's a whole new cast, has nothing to do with the original movie.
Yep. Yep.
But then there's also 2004 with Rob Lowe. I was like,
Which
ooh.
I thought was solid. Not particularly scary,
No.
but solid. We may at some point choose to review that just to kind of compare the two.
Ooh.
I would say this: the writing, of course, is always different. So the two cops working together, I actually like the lead cop being a bit of a homer for the for the small town or like that, and not trusting outsiders because that's realistic.
Yeah.
And when he calls Boston to get information on everybody, and he sits down with this constable and he's going over, it, he's like, "All right, what do you got?" And he said, and of course he's sitting there doing the thinking while people are telling him the
Mhm.
facts, right? And he's walking around. He's like, "Well, he's a left winger, against nuclear power and all that." And I'm like, "Why the hell did that make it in? And
Yeah.
how was that pertinent and everything? Because he's a writer, you're gonna automatically call him a left winger."
Yeah.
Um,
So watching this movie, I also kept thinking back to Silver Bull, which I'm really big fan of that movie.
that's a
And
good one, very good.
I think that has a better pace. Just more. It's more a little bit more creepy, especially if the werewolf gets shot. And he has a thing in his eye. And it's just it is more creepy. This was kind of like I said. This if I had to watch this, when I was younger, I think I'd be more terrified.
Yeah.
This was kind of like at the end. I kept thinking that.
Well, it's different. Silver Bullet, we
Yeah.
both love, and that's more action oriented. This to me is more of a thriller. It's more about the
Which
sense of dread that the
I
adults are trying
yeah.
to convey through each other
I
with real world going on stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do like thriller stuff, it's like, I do love it, like, but if this would have been a 2-hour movie instead of them making two-part movies, 2-hour movies, just make it like a 2-hour, condense it more, and just building the dread up, and then at the end it's like, holy shit, here's Dracula, like, or whatever, and then there's a fight with James Mason, they fall down the stairs instead of him just firing the gun, but even him firing the gun, it'd be like I wanted a little bit more violence, I'd say.
You did. See, I was fine with little. This kind of brings me to an idea I kind of want to bring up because I know over on your other show on the Geeky Puppet Show, you guys cover a lot of stuff and do readings and all that, and
Yeah.
we've talked about doing crossovers with movies that are not necessarily my taste, which are the comic book ones, generally speaking. Godzilla 2014. Obviously, everybody hated the 1998 one with Matthew Broderick, piece of crap
I
CGI.
loved it.
Well, most people didn't, and I hated it. I thought
I don't agree with that
disgusting.
statement. I think there's a few people who don't like it, but
Well, we'll agree to disagree, but the point I'm trying to make here is because of that and the fact that it was financially, I think, a bit of a bomb. There was a long layoff before 2014 with the latest Godzilla. I thought that was done really well, and I enjoyed it, and I like the fact that you did not see Godzilla a lot of his face or anything directly until almost towards the end of the movie, and it brings up the question, which is kind of the discussion I want to bring up because I think it's one that we haven't had on anything yet, but I think it's very important to kind of at least talk about it for a moment here because it's relative to Salem's Lot, which we're talking about with
yeah,
Godzilla. Some people go, "What's important in a monster movie?" Or let's just use the word horror movie. It's the monster. It's the creature. It's got to look cool. It's got to look right. It's got to be there. But I believe that the more you see it, the more you get desensitized to it, and that's kind of like that sequelitis
yeah,
rule where
it's
you got to up the
what
violence, you got to up the ante, you got to up the cleavage, you got
well,
to
I would
go
say.
overboard with it. And I just don't think that's the case. I think in this movie, if they had more violence, it would not have worked.
I think they would have done what they would from Dust to Dawn, turned into a TV series, and just built the dread up each week, and finally get to the very end. It's like I think it'd be a nice payoff. You can do a little bit more gore, like when people the blood coming down, and you can do more obviously, but like I said, I just for me is it was the length of this movie. If it had been only 2 hours long instead of being the
Right.
2-part movies, I think it would have had a better pace, and it would still fit with being creepy.
Did you ever see the original 1974-75 Toby Hooper movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
No, I seen parts of it. I'm not into the whole Leatherface thing because
Yeah,
Leatherface is actually Ed Gein. Sorry.
well, that really shocked a hell of a lot of people being kind of a mainstream movie or whatever and
Yeah,
seeing it. It was extremely graphic. Well, this is the same director, Toby Hooper, so
yeah,
he's has he's done some stuff obviously, and so it was a big name for him to do this, and they got him. I think they did pretty well with it. I think the thing is to your point about being young when you're seeing the more fantastical stuff can be scary with the violence. I'll bring up like say John Wick, where again, okay, all these bodies, but you're not there for what the body count is. You're there for the way he does it and how it's filmed. Let's say,
Ye-
and after a while, I think, like I say, you can get desensitized to it. So in here, I think the strength of Salem's Lot is that it does give somebody that hasn't seen a lot of Stephen King or only the recently made stuff like Castle Rock and everything else, that's what King does. He's very good at taking all these different characters, writing something about them. They illustrate something that's going on in the town. John Carpenter would do this too. He'd always have a town drunk laying around, right? I mean, there's one in here
Yes,
too.
yes. And I say, and it would be Ron Howard. No, no. But when I do a double take, this guy goes, Mike, is that Ron Howard? Is that Ron Howard? No, it's not him. Or not Ron Howard. I mean, Clint Howard. Sorry, Clint. Ron, yeah, Clint Howard. Yeah, Clint's the one that's the weirdo in all the movies. Ron's the normal one. But anyway, yeah, I guess I did like the fact that they had the John Drunker and the cops, like, no, sheriff, it's like, I don't trust that guy. I'm like, go have another donut, fat ass. And shut up. Leave the guy alone. He hasn't done anything. And he says like, he takes the guy, the town drunk's hooch away. He's like, I want to keep an eye on the guy. He's like, what are you doing? He murdered people. Just drunk people are like, as we were drinking bottle stuff. He's like, what? And he just fucked around with them. And honestly, I just don't care for the, when I, like, those are the people, which they always put those kind of people in there. They have the heavy set kind of like, I'm in charge, these guys, power trip guys. Well, I always love it and I love it when they get, their ass kicked, like in Rambo, First Blood, same thing. Thinks he's all tough and mighty, and then he's like, oh shit.
Well, you mentioned the point about Stephen King. Is he really putting himself in there? I mean, you write what you know,
well,
and I think that people think of cops as being militant in a way, and this is the time I think you and I talked about us in reviewing all the Dirty Harry movies too. About we can talk about it being a revenge thing and how people hated it, but still, Dirty Harry was still a cop. He still worked for the government. He was an arm of the government, but he started to see just how bad it got, rather than just a rogue cop or one that just went bad or did a bad thing. And so I think that was in the public consciousness, not trusting government. And so I think at that point, generally, you saw a lot of writers taking cops instead of being people to look up to. You look down on them, so you made them fat, you made them blustery, you gave them the Brian Dennehy treatment, although we love him in Rambo. But I always point this out. You always see them stuffing their fat face with something, and that was just the thing. It's such a joke that it was you see it everywhere in the 70s going into the 80s. And I agree with you that that's probably a King thing, but I just think what they do in Hollywood or did, we're talking this time period. Same thing with the action and violence. I don't think they really want to have a lot of violence in here because too much of it, and then the story becomes about the violence, and you're waiting for the next kill. It was more about the
it's like
and taking care of kids first. They're the ones that died first. That's more horrific.
Child vampires, and then So like So basically, seeing this movie and watching this, I kept thinking it's like could they have done this better? Like I said, and I always say I go like these TV movies. If this had been like a TV show or season-long series, like we saw with Kolchak the Night Stalker. But imagine Kolchak the Night Stalker, but it kept Vincenzo remembered everything. It just built on, and I would like we've seen that with Dark Shadows. Where they could do Dracula and all that stuff. This would have been kind of interesting to see them actually building up the horror, and then you're left at that cliffhanger at the end of the season. Just he finally finds out who the main bad guy, the vampire, is, because he thought he killed the main vampire, but it turns out it wasn't him. It was actually somebody else. It's like I love that. Focus, get you to focus on one thing to find out it's a red herring. We saw that rabbit hole. I want something like that, but with with vampires. And also the fact is that for this movie, for the people don't believe in vampires and all that stuff, having the main good guy seem like he's crazy would be awesome too. Like, having them like, well, the sheriff's like, this guy's dead. You're the prime suspect.
The sheriff hauled ass out of there. He knew what was up.
I know, but he left.
And he's taking the fan and the broom with him, and it's tying it up on his roof. I'm like, I kind of popped for that. I was like, hey, for being a bit of an ass, the guy had common sense, which is what you want out of somebody like it.
Like I said, I always love it when the main hero has to prove, like Michael Biehn's character in Terminator. He's like, it's like, I know what I'm talking about. You can't kill, you can't reuse him. I love, like, he's just trying to convince. Yeah. I love those kind of characters that, protagonist is trying to do that, and like if somebody antagonists get in the way, like cops or like there's somebody else, and mayor's like this guy doesn't always talk about, and then the guy is like you have like the mayor be like. He's like, yeah, he's like, calm away, and then the mayor, oh shit, gets the text, or the mayor's in on it. It's like I love those. I love the mystery, like kind of like suspense thrillers. We do
Ask you
this.
this, since it was a first watch for you,
Yeah,
obviously, it's pretty old and all that too. I remember watching it on TV
yeah.
as a kid, and so yeah, I was curious because it's been forever since I seen it. Was it still scary to me? Was I going to find it hokey? Was it going to be a good print and it's going to look cheesy? The one scene that everybody talked about was there's two of them that come to mind, but the main one was when you see the Glick boy coming up to the window, just kind of like
Yes,
floating. Did you
inspiration
think
for
that sucked, or what did you think of it?
No, I actually popped for that because because that scene is inspiration, heavily for what the Vampire Slayer movie by Josh Whedon.
How so?
He actually said that this is a movie where he has his friend floating up the window. He's like, "I'm gonna let me in," and that was Brody. I believe it was Brody Lee, or no, it was a Jason. I can't remember who it was, but he's like, "Yeah." In that movie, they did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They had the friend let him in. And he's like, "Dude, no, I'm not gonna let you." And Luke Perry's just like, "No, it keeps the door closed." He's like, "Go away." And I love the fact that like, because I forgot that this was Salem Lot was supposed to be inspiration for that movie.
I did not know that because the
Yeah,
movie was so well received the way they did it in that goofy way that the
yeah.
TV show was based off of that. See, all this came from Salem's Lot.
Salem's Lot. It's our, Stephen King kind of love. Uh, yeah, having we even have the one thing that Salem's Lot kind of changed, or not Salem's Lot, but Josh Whedon changed was having Rutger Hauer be the main bad guy and having been charming, glamour, kind of like mixing Hammer horror, Christopher Lee with Salem's Lot. And like I said, I'm always used to being, Christopher Lee being, I'm the powerful, like I'm the one in trouble. And this one's like, this one's just like, yeah, sorry, Christopher Lee. James Mason's in charge.
James Mason, British character actor, he has that constipated kind of look, like, yes, quite my good boy.
He's
And
always pissed off.
but he is tremendous in here, and I'm watching him, and it's this combination of the mustache, the eyes, and just the way he stares and he stands and looks at people with such utter disdain. Like when a cop's talking to him, and he's got the knife in his hand that he's just fooling around with and talking, and it's like I don't see a lot of really cool acting thingies like that are going on anymore. Usually we get like a good stunt or we get a nice camera shot or something. But the combination of doing some of these things is really impressive. I know it sounds kind of weird and it's certainly
Yeah.
not scary, but you think of somebody like Gene Kelly, like in
So-
American in Paris, with the opening scene where he's in his little studio, and you get a Gene Kelly moment for a couple minutes where he's doing things with his feet and his hands, and it's one big long take that you see, and you go, "Oh, damn it, that's really cool." I just think James Mason here, it really stood out to me, not just how terrifying he is. This is off the top of my head, this is the only time I can think of where the Renfield type character was really terrifying. It's like we don't even need to have the vampire, because this guy is like the wall between reality and all this fantasy stuff that the doctor didn't want to believe in, or any of the adults, and understood. Here again, this is another King thing. The kids were more likely to be open to alternative possibilities much quicker than the adults were, especially because you had a doctor, a man of science, and King would always have characters like that. But James Mason just fucking crushes it in this to me. And I know some people say, "Oh, he acted like a constipated old man just getting a check for the movie." I just would disagree with that. I think it's phenomenal, and I think anybody who's interested in horror and just wants to have the idea of what it is to convey charisma, watch his acting, because it's not all about talking; it's the way you move and the way you do things.
And anybody saying that he acted a constipated old man just for the role, like just get the paycheck, more power to him. Don't be jealous. The guy can just do that and make money. It must suck for other people who can't do that. Yeah, I said going through this, I kept thinking like the main bad guy, or not maybe I get, but the protagonist, David Soul's character,
Ben
Mears.
Yeah,
Ben Mears was such a pussy. I'm sorry. I just kept thinking it's like he guy approaches this. He's in the park and he sees this girl drawing stuff. He sees a book laying upside down. Walks over, doesn't say a word, like a creeper. And I'm thinking like, mace.
No, you
uh,
can approach people in the town like that
it,
too, but I'm sure she would have, like freaked out because you're
she
right.
did.
This
She
is the
bungled it.
dickish kind of part. It's like, bro, you're a writer. You're looking for something strange. She's got your book. She's easy pickings from a small town. You know what
Exactly.
you're
I'm like,
doing. And it's
this
like,
is
be a little more, yeah.
serial killer. I kept thinking, this guy would have been a perfect, just a Wayne Gacy murder kind of like guy, Ted Bundy. Because the way he approached her, and then she's like, "Oh, it's you in the book." Oh, and it's like, he's like, I'm halfway through reading it, and like, so she has ups and downs. She's sketching a pineapple, this. Like, I'm the art teacher at the school. He's like, and in like, and he says like, "Oh, I bet you have a boyfriend." It's like, he's like, "What
Kinda.
are you?" It says you have a wife, kids, or no, or on the
Yeah,
book.
you're
And he's
married
like,
with, yeah.
yeah, she died 2 years ago. I'm the best. I'm like, I need to know more about that before I date you because she's dead. Okay, it's no kids. Like, and you came up to me like a creeper. Uh, but anyway, like, I love it. He's like, she's like, "Oh, I love your other work." He's like, "What's the title called?" He's like, "I can't remember because she doesn't give a shit." But she
Yeah, it's
goes,
like, dude, she wants to get to know you, and
yeah.
you're more about stroking your ego here than getting to know the town cutie. You know what I'm saying?
And then you got the angry plumber, who's like, "That's my girl you're talking to." I'm thinking like, yeah, he ain't gonna last in this movie. And he actually gets revenge on Ben. Like, he comes up and punches him. So Ben ends up in hospital. And he's like, "Oh shit, I need to get a crucifix. Give me a crucifix, dogs."
But then again, the scene you mentioned at the end there, where yeah, it seemed rather routine and almost Hammer like, how they killed at the end. But then when he's sitting there, the boy, and he's watching it go on, and the openings there in the back, and you see everybody with their eyes, that kind of contact lens. I always thought that looked cool when they're all
Oh my
trying to
gosh.
crawl out of there really slowly.
Oh, that
It's
was
him.
creepy.
It's it's all
Yeah.
the people that had been taken that they had mentioned. I thought
Yeah.
that was kind of a neat looking scene too, because while this is going on, they're going, that's going fast, but the action behind him is coming slow, and he's literally kind of caught in the middle. There's there's definitely some shots in here that I think if you did see the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's an element
Well,
of claustrophobia in it that you don't see, as well as one or two really quick jump scares or
you
quick cuts or
remember
whatever you want to call them. And he brought that into Salem's Lot, I think.
you remember in Fright Night how everybody was under like the porch, the reboot?
Hmm.
They did that. And I kept thinking that like, oh, it's like, oh, this is the same thing. You got these in a cellar door, cubby hole underneath the house.
Hmm.
Where the
Root cellar, yeah.
yeah, and that's where they're all hiding, and that's where he pulled the coffin out of. And the kid's like too busy, like, hey, he's gonna kill a vampire. He's watching his horror, and he's like, oh shit. He's like, he's got to close the door. Look, he had the screwdriver there from Don Callis. So it was great.
Go fuck yourself. Well, let's wind things up here a little bit. And one thing I did not ask you, even though you said it was your first
Yeah.
watch, what made you want to tackle this?
Oh, it's one of those movies where it's been talked about a lot. You're like, oh, Salem's Lot. It's like, you need to check out this Salem's Lot. Like, just like Pet Cemetery. I hear that all the freaking time. These are the big name movies, as far as horrors he watches. And it's a vampire movie. They know nothing about it. Stephen King, that's about it. And I figured, like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. It'd be great content for the here. Obviously, I didn't like as much as some other people did. I would say it's just about mid.
Okay. No, that's fair.
For story wise, going as far as or pacing, but as far as say, I did love the scenery. Did love the old school kind of clothing, and I did love the typewriter. I love seeing typewriters because you never see typewriters in movies anymore. They're gone. Absolutely, everyone's got smartphones.
I remember when he was driving around town and looking around when everyone's starting to disappear and it's getting kind of lonely and quiet on the streets midday. I remember seeing it in one of the scenes. There was the old Coca-Cola stand up outside
Yes.
the corner store of the Coke machines or whatever. And I just
Yeah.
am like, man, I miss the sound of that thing. You come up and you put in your quarter and you punch that thing and it'd come out in a glass bottle. Oh.
I miss going to the bowling alley and then seeing the old guys go put a quarter or whatever into the vending machine and getting the pack of cigarettes out.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Coffee machines, dispensers in the vending machines. Yeah.
That's one of the things you don't see in movies today that because again, the way manufacturing is here, a lot of the cars look the same, a lot of the buildings are looking the same. So to me, I think one added, I don't even know if I want to call it a bonus,
Yeah.
but one thing I've noticed is when you see the older movies, like when we're talking about Mission Impossible, the TV show, the episodes, or you mentioned Kolchak, which we've
Mhm.
done, and other things, all these things in the background start to pop out a little bit, which I'm like, yeah, I remember this or that. And it's just,
Yeah.
it is a cultural thing. And Stephen King culturally, like I say at the time, was really known for capturing just general average human beings from small towns because he grew up in a small town, and most of America actually lived in small towns up until maybe say 2 generations ago
Hey,
after
John
World War
Cougar.
II. Yeah, and then his short stories are generally considered his best writing because of the characters and stuff. Everybody knows Stand By Me from I think 1986. But that was, I think, in a book called Different Seasons, and all of them are fantastic. He's done a few of those; those are great. But his character writing is really great. And I know he's done like some westerns a little bit. We actually, our first TV thing we did, I think we did season one of Haven, which was based off the Colorado
Well,
Kid, which I have not
you
read.
bring up Haven. Haven was basically supposed to be Maine. This was supposed to be named Maine as well, even though it
Yes,
was filmed in California, but it was supposed to be Maine.
yes,
That's why it's a small, quiet little town. And like I said, that's usually where the best movies, horror movies are. And they call it Salem. So you're like, oh, okay. So if you hear Salem's
Jerusalem's
Lot,
Lot.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
witches, man. But it's Jerusalem.
Hmm.
It's called, but they call it Salem for whatever reason. And honestly, the only thing that was missing there was a black cat going across. Like, yeah, I did love like the fog and some of this, to the mist scenes. But I mean, obviously, it just if this would have been a little bit more faster pace, or just cut the movie, cut some stuff out. You didn't. There's a lot of stuff you didn't need in there. You can still build it up, make it intense, and having a little bit more jump scares.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, he's in there, and like at the end, because you see like at the very end of this, and the very end of the movie, the girl he loved, because she apparently shows up at the end. She's a vampire, and they're in Guatemala, and she's laying
kiss
there,
me.
kiss me, and I'm like,
Yeah, take it,
hey,
bam.
yeah, yeah, and he's like. And they pan to the window. It's out of focus though. Behind her, there's a window there, and I'm thinking, dude, all you gotta do on this is have another vampire just peek his head out and just see the eyes glow, and that's it.
I know, right? I know, right?
And the fangs. That's
Yeah.
all. That's all I needed, and I'd be hyped for the next one. But I mean, like instead, we're going. Here's the full moon, and then it's Skeletor from He-Man in the moon for a second, and then that's how it ends. But I'm just kept thinking, it's like you set up for having a possible another adventure. The problem is you're going to have that they did return to Salem's Lot, but you can't because we left Salem's Lot. It was vanquished was evil, or evil was vanquished.
Yeah.
I want On the Run, and like especially because it's now 1979 when this movie was released, or when it takes place, going into the 80s and seeing how this kid grows up, and you can even have where the kid is actually growing up now. Maybe Ben bit the dust, or the kid has to kill Ben because Ben got turned.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
you could totally continue this, but instead they decided to go with a whole new cast a couple years later, probably because someone else bought the rights to it and decided, you know what, we'll just scrap it. We'll
Well,
call it
speaking of that, James Wan has had his hand in a lot of things lately, and he's done a lot of stuff I've enjoyed. I thought is very well in low budgets and all that. Apparently, there was a year or two ago another Salem's Lot movie completely done, shot, but of course because of
2021.
COVID with schedules, it didn't get released. It was supposed to come out last year. There's no date for it this year that I could see just with some quick searching. But there's one in the can that somehow at some point is going to get released, whether it's to streaming or into theaters. And I don't know what the hell they're waiting on. Because as soon as it comes out, I'm going to want to see it, review it, and compare it to this.
Like I said, I would change the vampire into this movie, make it more like Jerry from Fright Night. Colin Farrell, how he was just a nice, handsome, nice, or Chris Sarandon in the original Fright Night, charming, you wouldn't suspect.
Mm-hmm.
This is just straight up, oh, look at me, wings, that's Nosferatu, and it's like, doesn't have wings, he just has the long finger, and he has and I just like, I'm like, dude, come on, this isn't like the 1930s Nosferatu, like, I don't care for that stuff. Maybe at one time it's horrifying, but to me it was just like,
a lot of the negative things you're saying are the exact same things people said Lost Voyage of the Demeter, and I love them both. I think these are both great movies. I really do.
Yeah.
I know the other one's 3 hours, but that's kind of the charm of it to me. You know, you're going to settle in for a long night rather than 90 minutes and it's over. That's one thing I do appreciate. So I think we both like it,
Yeah.
decent enough to recommend it to everybody too. So we'll
It's
leave it
worth
at
a
that.
shot. Like I said,
Absolutely.
I put off 20 years not watching it because I hear about it. Same with Pet Cemetery. And I just rolled my eyes at it. It's like I'm good.
Well, and the thing too is if you see this, hey yo, Johnny, if you see this movie, it's still a lot better than stuff that's coming out now or stuff
True.
that's been out for a while. I mean, it's okay to sit there and go,
Everything's
"Hey, I
comedy
kind of
now.
like this one, or I kind of like Wrong Turn, or I kind of like this that." But then after that, you're like, you're going to watch it again. This at least has a feel to it that's consistent, and whether that's your taste or not, that might decide for you if you'd want to rewatch it
Uh,
again. Like I
yeah.
would at some point, you may not, and that's cool. But I think it definitely is very good that way. It's done very well. I think in no means it's a cheap shit film
Just
or
like I
a
said, if you
Shudder
can
exclusive.
find it
So.
in the 2-part original series instead of watching the 3-hour like I did in our archive, you might like it better. I just felt like it just putting it all together once when it was meant to be watched in 2 nights.
Mhm.
That's what ruined my experience for me. And that's what I see. I'm looking at right now online. People have bought the Blu-rays reviews. They're saying the exact same thing. It's like, man, if I would have watched this as 2 hours, two different nights, I probably liked it better. But yeah,
And I'm discovering that, like with like you and Johnny, a lot of people are not realizing it was
yeah,
a two-part
yeah,
movie event when it was a big deal because you knew about it coming up, would be advertised and hyped up. So you sat down and watched that for 2 hours with popcorn on one of the three big channels you had at the time, and then you'd watch the next one after that. And that kind of event-driven programming does not exist. Everything to like you and I have talked about,
yeah,
we mentioned like with Rabbit Hole, what did they do? They released one episode a week. So you were looking forward to it. You had some hype for it, and that
yeah,
helped rather than, oh, it's out. Oh, let me go catch up on all 8 episodes or whatever it is. I mean, that's just how it is. So
yeah.
that's something worth considering too. If you didn't know it was 3 hours, if you knew it was 3 hours going ahead to it, you might have had a different mindset, right?
Yeah,
But keep
because
that in mind, like Johnny or anybody that might go check
and
it out if they haven't seen it.
like I said, it's also one of the reasons why I like Fright Night, original Fright Nights over this because the fact that you had it was much more. You had the handsome vampire, you had again the next door neighbor, you had this kid, and then you had Roddy McDowell.
Yeah,
He was basically like the Vincent Price. Oh, welcome to Fright Night, and he's like,
not
oh shit.
scary. It's just cute.
No, but in fact, they knew they basically it said Fright Night is a different animal. Fright Night had an actual like vampires aren't real, and then the kid and the kid's like, oh, you're this great vampire hunter. It just plays into the or we build this fantasies about
It's
Vincent
TV,
Price.
bro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But this kid too, though, this kid really couldn't. The fact that he even bought into this kid, this guy knew what he was doing. The kid could have freaked out and been like, like or I could do it. Don't worry,
Yeah.
Literally going in there, I would have said he lit the house on fire. I'm like, do it first.
All right. Anything you need to plug before we call it a night?
I'm gonna be going live in a few minutes over on a Geeky Puppet Show for those who like comic books. So I'll be going to live stream on there. Or if you say you're not into checking what the new stuff is now, we have some older readings. We did Blade versus Dracula, some other Tuma werewolf stories, a crossover with the Werewolf by Night. So a lot of cool different little horror comic books on there as well. Yeah. So thank you guys for showing up. If you haven't done so, please click like and subscribe. Help us get to 1,000, man. We're almost there.
It's tantalizing.
Yeah.
James Mason, please subscribe. That's all I ask. That's all I want for Halloween this year.
Right? Isn't he dead?
Stop it. Stop
and
it.
Loving
I
it?
tell you. Yeah, oh boy. Yeah, guys, fun watch there too. Hope you guys, if you watch it, you enjoy it there too. We're obviously keeping up with our Halloween theme of different movies and all that too. So Sunday we'll have something where Professor Pixel will be joining us, and we'll be covering up. RDV Now will come up with something on next Tuesday too. Remember, we're going a little bit based off the list that we went over last week, just covering some generic Hollywood topics. We slipped this one in because it's one of those ones that's like a gold standard. You got to watch at some point in your life if you like this sort of stuff. It fits your time of the year, and it's a good introduction to all things Stephen King. That being said, have a good night, everybody. Thanks for watching, listening, and stay extreme. Good night now.
Blah.